So that being said, let me introduce our first speaker, who is Mr. Hada, who currently leads the OHCHR, the thematic engagement in New York on equality and non-discrimination, sustainable development, and the rule of law to mainstream human rights in interagency and intergovernmental discussions at the UN headquarters. Before this, he coordinated the OHCHR's global thematic work on economic, social, and cultural rights and the human rights of older persons. And in 2019, he co-led the UN Water Campaign for World Water Day with the theme of leaving no one behind. Water for all, whoever you are, wherever you are, water is your human right. For over a decade, he led the OHCHR's human rights mainstreaming agenda in the UN system and coordinated UN interagency efforts to integrate human rights in the policies and programs of the UN system and to promote human rights-based implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Before that, I'm not going to go through, he had a long history of other positions in the UN. He is perfectly placed to give us some framing of this issue around the human rights to water and sanitation. Do you want to talk from here, or do you want to talk from there?
Thank you very much, and thank you for gathering here today at the UN Water Conference to share your stories, experience, and commitment. So, almost 2 years ago, inspired by the 10th anniversary of the human rights to water and sanitation, impelled by the impact of COVID-19 pandemic worldwide, we started embarking on the journey to chart a way to develop a roadmap, the UN and our partners, to better promote human rights to water and sanitation and to integrate a human rights-based approach into our work on water and sanitation. And we asked ourselves, where do we start? And we all felt that the most appropriate way to begin this journey is to listen and give voices to people, ordinary people, people living in the current situation who are very remote from the halls of the United Nations across the street. Because human rights belong to people, to each of us. 75 years ago, the UN adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, proclaiming all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. And it was 13 years ago at the General Assembly, the UN formally recognized water and sanitation as fundamental human rights. But despite progress, still billions of people worldwide are without access to safe drinking water or dignified sanitation. This is not merely a development failure, that large industrial, agriculture, and manufacturing companies divert, consume, and contaminate water with absolute impunity for its consequences of local communities. It's not just an oversight. That the denial of access or failure to provide clean water and sanitation is deeply rooted in discrimination, inequality, and marginalization of women, children, minorities, indigenous, refugees, migrants, and other groups. This is not just a mere coincidence. And that increasingly local human rights activists, particularly indigenous human rights defenders, environmental activists, are paying with their very lives for their resistance to large-scale development projects infested with commercial interests. This is not merely a tragedy. This is a human rights failure. And we must ask ourselves, on what foundation access to water and sanitation and the whole of sustainable development goals must stand in order that they or we not be crushed. And that bedrock is human rights, connected to justice, concerned with protection of communities and individuals, oriented to our dignity, to the essential basis if we are to survive and thrive, integral to all of our human rights to eat, to be healthy, to learn and develop, and also to speak freely and to participate in making important decisions. This right to water cannot be realized if we treat water merely as a commodity to sell, trade, speculate, and profit. Water must be understood as an absolute right, and it is the fulfillment of that absolute right that we must address our solutions. Access to water and sanitation is a game-changing right. Water is life. Water is indispensable to a healthy planet and sustainable development, and thus the more stable, peaceful, inclusive, and prosperous world. Leaving no one behind is a central commitment of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And it carries a strong message for leaving no one behind. It's not only about a matter of reaching back to the most vulnerable and marginalized. It is something much deeper. For so acted by this is of to leave no one behind. What we need is to put rights holders front and center. So I look forward to hearing your testimonies and experience and responses from governments and partners. I would like to assure you of our commitment to amplify your voices at this conference and beyond to the SDG Summit and to the Summit of the Future through partnership with all of us present here. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I think absolutely excellent introduction. Water, the human right to water is an absolute right as a game changer, and recognizing the agency of the rights holders and putting them in the front of this engagement. And that's what we're going to do right now, is we're going to put the rights holders in the front. We now have the goddess of technology is on our side. We now have a video. Very interesting technology.
I don't see some.
Is coming, I promise. Just to recap, as Alana mentioned, what you're seeing this afternoon is clips from a much wider range of videos that have been submitted and that will be part of the ongoing campaign, because this is one event, but it's part of an ongoing process, and it needs to be part of an ongoing process. Are we winning with the videos, or do you want to go on to the speakers and we come to the videos next?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We'll go with the next speakers. We'll come
Let's switch it up a bit. Can we go to the two speakers, and then we will come back to the videos after that. The first speaker that I would like to bring up to the front is Patricia Eduviges Silva López, and please, I apologize for my appalling Spanish accent. She was born in a poor, highly marginalized indigenous community called San Luis Morelia in the state of Oaxaca in Mexico. She's a nurse, and she realized that not having access to water was a violation of the human rights to food, to health, water and sanitation, to education, and to gender equality. She's an activist who informs indigenous and rural communities about the human right to water and sanitation, and she's worked with women's groups in the Mixteca region of OHCHR for more than 10 years now, and she created an organization called MUDEN that constructs water systems with backyard gardens, transforming the lives of hundreds of women from dispersed rural communities. And she is going to speak in Spanish. Once she's finished, will you summarize it? Okay, can we do it that way? You'll try. Okay. Or do you want to do it as she's speaking? Fine. Let's go.
Bueno, buenas tardes a todas y todos. Primero quiero agradecer la oportunidad de estar aquí en este foro tan importante y también llamado escuchar a los que no somos escuchados.
Hello, good evening, thank you everybody. First, I would like to thank the invitation to be in these forums, this forum to hear all the voices that are over here.
Mi nombre es Patricia Silva, soy mexicana, oaxaqueña de nacimiento de la región mixteca. Me reconozco como mujer indígena porque nací en una comunidad indígena. ¿Y por qué estoy aquí? Porque yo viví en carne propia lo que es la violación de mis derechos humanos.
My name is Patricia López Silva, and I am here coming from the Mixteca region in the mountains of Oaxaca, Mexico. And I am here because I have lived in first person what is to lack human rights.
Sin embargo, cuando yo era pequeña, yo no identificaba que era un derecho humano. En mi comunidad se piensa en comer y en sobrevivir. No sabía que era un derecho humano.
When I was little, however, I didn't know what it was a human right because we were so much worried for having something to eat, have food on the table instead of thinking of human rights.
Agradezco a la vida y a Dios que me dio una mamá guerrera que me tuvo que sacar de mi comunidad para poder ejercer el derecho a la educación.
I am so thankful to my mother, who was a warrior and a missionary, who took me out of my community so I could enjoy the right to education.
Yo soy enfermera de profesión y mi papá fallece 20 años después que me sacan de mi comunidad. Y cuando regreso a mi comunidad, parece que no había pasado nada. Las mismas calles, la misma pobreza, la misma discriminación, la misma marginación. Solo la gente había cambiado de edad.
As you know, I am a nurse. My profession is to be a nurse. But when my father died, I came back to my community, and it was sad to see that nothing had changed. The habits that she left before, only people was changing age.
En ese momento, pues yo iba con mucho dolor, iba a enterrar a mi padre y encontrarme con todo ese contexto, lo único que pensé fue en esas niñas y niños que estaban pasando lo que yo pasé pues años atrás. Y así nace la organización que yo fundé que se llama Mujeres en Desarrollo.
I was back to my town for a sad moment because my father died. But then I saw all this situation, and that inspired me to start developing this NGO, so-called Women in Development.
Y ahí comienza este amor por reconocerme primero como mujer y dejarme de culpar por ser mujer, porque muchas veces yo dije, ¿por qué no nací hombre? ¿Por qué tengo que ser mujer? Porque yo no puedo estar en los lugares donde se pueden tomar decisiones, porque yo también siento igual que los hombres.
This was hard also for me because at the beginning I started to knowing myself and to knowing my rights as a woman, because at the beginning I was thinking why I should have born men, so that could be easy and I could be part of the decision-making processes, and she started like this fight to find herself.
Y bueno, así empiezo a trabajar con las mujeres de mi comunidad. Primero, pues intentando convencer a los hombres porque pues es un tema prohibido como una mujer va a andar sacando a otras mujeres en su comunidad, y para que no me lincharan, pues tuve que empezar por convencer a las autoridades de mi comunidad que me dejaran hablar con otras mujeres de la comunidad. Y empezamos primero por reconocernos como personas dignas de derechos. Yo decía que es un derecho humano, todo el mundo lo dice, pero ¿qué es? ¿Cómo se siente? ¿Cómo se disfruta?
So she started talking with the women. She said, but she had to go and ask permission to the authorities to be able to talk with to the women because there was not allowed, and they were looking at her badly. And so she started. She got the permission. Then she started talking to them, and they start by recognizing that there are women entitled to rights.
Y con muchos aspavientos y con muchas tormentas, pues empezamos a organizarnos. Yo escribiría un libro para contar todo lo que pasé. Yo pensé que ya había sanado ese dolor porque yo digo, ya lo hablo, ya no me duele, pero bueno, de prueba es que sí me duele y sobre todo en estos foros tan grandes. Pero primero empezamos por eso, por investigar qué significa ser mujer, reconocernos dignas de derechos y entender que es un derecho humano. Y entonces empezaron los talleres del derecho humano al agua y saneamiento. Y digo yo, bendita agua, hoy me trajo
everything started to be able to recognize their rights as a women, and then they started the human right to water home workshops, and that's the water who brought her here, and she's very thankful to the water.
Estando juntas, entendimos que no va a llegar el Estado a decirnos, ten el dinero para que ejerzas tu derecho, porque eso no lo vemos en comunidades indígenas. Perdón, pero lo tengo que decir, allá no llega al Estado. Y entonces entendimos que nosotras teníamos que buscar la solución y empezamos por identificar la problemática y después buscar cómo lo arreglamos, cómo lo arreglamos, y nacen los sistemas de captación de agua de lluvia en tomas familiares.
So they are very clear that the state is not going to provide in most of the cases. So they are not just going to bring money and provide. So they start organizing themselves to have this rain system, the caption for the rain system.
Pero bueno, empieza también el otro tema, no somos albañiles, no sabemos agarrar la pala, no sabemos agarrar el cemento, teníamos que convivir con los hombres y entonces entendimos también el tema de la equidad de género, que no tenemos que estar peleados con los hombres, que debemos ir a la par, pero este tema lo tenemos que entender ambos, hombres y mujeres, que no somos sus rivales, queremos trabajar juntos para solucionar problemas.
They needed help from the men. So because to build the systems, they say they were not workers to be able to do that. So they start understanding the equality of the gender participation in different types of work. So they start working with them. They are not in fight necessarily with them.
Actualmente es algo que no habíamos sistematizado. La organización nació en 2013 oficialmente, pero después de que una mujer tiene agua en su domicilio, cambian muchas cosas. Empieza a tomar decisiones y el tomar decisiones empieza a cambiar muchas cosas en su casa, porque entonces ya no dice o obedece lo que alguien le dice, sino también ya piensa, ya entiende que es digna de derechos. Y entonces a eso, pues yo no sé si eso sea equidad de género, pero yo lo transverso así. Entonces entendí el tema de equidad de género.
The organization was officially formed in 2013, and since then, I mean, many things have happened. I'm sorry, I'm not too literal, but they start bringing water to their houses. And then to have that empowerment of women bringing water to their house, everything changed. And since then, the participation and decision-making also changed. So they start empower themselves.
Y actualmente pues tenemos grupos de mujeres en varias comunidades de la Mixteca, tenemos instalados ya 82 sistemas de captación de agua y lluvia. Estamos integrando a los jóvenes porque en mi país se acostumbra a delegarle la obligación al joven cuando cumple 18 años y lo aventamos sin que no sepa nada. Entonces, yo sí creo que deben participar porque además lo hacen maravillosamente, porque saben tomar decisiones, porque tienen mucha energía y entonces ahora estamos trabajando jóvenes y mujeres para el ejercicio de nuestro derecho humano al agua.
So since then, they have 82 systems to catch the rain in the Mixteca region, all started by female empowering, but they are now trying to encourage young people so they can continue this fight.
Y entonces, pues, yo quiero cerrar esto diciendo que en las comunidades indígenas también habemos personas dignas de derecho, también necesitamos gozar ese derecho, necesitamos tener agua para que se ejerza esos derechos humanos que transversan a la vida. Muchas gracias.
I want to close by saying that in indigenous communities, we are also entitled to this right, and we need to be in day by day having this human right to water. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias, Patricia. Thank you very much for that very moving story and that very powerful story about just how much change women can make when they put their minds to it. I'm always delighted by the stories of the power of women when they really decide to make change and just how transformative that change can be. I believe that we're now ready to go with the videos. So I'm going to suggest we take the videos now and then we'll come to Migdalia. Okay. No. Video first. A bit of patience. Get it all lined up, and then when we're waiting, it doesn't quite. We're coming. Technology is not been after all, I'm afraid. The god of rain came. You can't have it all. There we go.
Give us some water, but they say that we are staying here illegally. So they the problem we are facing here is we don't have shelter, we don't have water, we don't have toilets. We end up going to the bush and taking water from open places. We have spoken to the city council to give us, but they say that we are staying here illegally, so they can't provide water. But we are still doing our recycling, so we can't go anywhere. So we are appealing for UN to help our council so that they can upgrade the place we are staying.
Ça fait moi 13 ans que je vis en Guadeloupe. Mon conjoint est guadeloupéen et on a une petite fille de 3 ans et demi. Depuis 13 années, je n'ai jamais connu l'eau au robinet sans problème en Guadeloupe. On a des tours d'eau avec des coupures à... Ensuite, la difficulté que nous avons rencontrée, petite fille de 3 ans et demi qui est atteinte d'une maladie rare, qui a demandé en tout et pour tout jusqu'à présent quasiment 2 ans d'hospitalisation. Et donc, à l'hôpital, par chambre, le droit à 1,5 litre en bouteille. Et si on a besoin de plus, il faut justifier d'un soin particulier. J'en ai référé à la direction de l'hôpital, mais c'est très compliqué d'avoir des réponses. Donc, on a été obligé d'acheter des packs d'eau et de l'apporter. Ensuite, donc c'est fort onéreux puisque c'est pas forcément la solution qu'on attend. Et comment est-ce qu'on fait dans notre foyer lorsqu'on n'a pas les moyens? d'avoir une citerne et d'avoir accès à l'eau. Donc la réalité, c'est venir sur le territoire et mettre en place des mesures pour qu'on puisse avoir un quotidien normal avec l'accès à l'eau sans en avoir à débourser les frais.
Pues sí, pasamos la mitad del día cargando agua, a veces en el rayo del calorón, porque no hay, y tenemos que cargar esas cuetas de los para que convenga el viaje, porque si no nos vamos a cantar con las cuetas chiquitas. Y también, nuestros niños también ya andan con sus cubetitos también, cargando agua, porque si no, mira, tenemos que sacar para, más que nada para los quehaceres de la cocina.
Bueno, yo me llamo María Luisa Ortigosa Reyes, soy presidenta del Comité de Mujeres Trabajando. Nos juntamos, hicimos peticiones para que nos apoyen ante del agua. Somos mujeres pues organizadoras de que estamos y trabajando todos en unión y nos organizamos pidiendo apoyo para que nos apoyen pues lo del agua, porque sí, aquí si no hay.
Pues nosotros lo que queremos que exigimos más que nada, exigimos así que, porque necesitamos el agua, que nos apoyen, les digo a nosotros. Porque no es justo, les digo que a los que ya tienen, les estén y más, entre más, ¿no valemos o qué?
Thank you. I apologize, but it was a bit like watching an old-fashioned slideshow for those of us who are old enough to remember what slideshows were. But I think the message came across very, very clearly. And I think it's the same message that we're hearing, that we heard from Patricia, and that you will see in many of the other videos when you access the campaign as it goes on. People desperate for water, not getting the support they need, trying to make their own plan, spending hours collecting water, and particularly the burden falling on women. On that note, I'm going to ask Migdalia to come and speak. Migdalia is a social worker. She's a specialist in popular education and leadership and participation programs of Indigenous women in her country, which is Guatemala.
Soy la voz de mi madre, de mis abuelas y de mis hermanas mujeres de América Latina. I am the voice of my mother, my grandmothers, my sisters, and all the women in Latin America. Pues estas mujeres de las zonas rurales no disfrutamos de este derecho humano al agua. Es más, muchas ni siquiera saben que lo tienen. Because these women in rural areas do not enjoy the human right to water. In fact, there are so many that don't even know that they have it. Pues caminan largas horas y varios kilómetros para ir a traer el agua, sacrificando su tiempo, su salud y su desarrollo. They walk for hours to go and bring the water to their places, sacrificing time, health, and development. Por eso, desde Ongagua, facilitamos un proceso con estas mujeres de las zonas rurales de Nicaragua, de Ecuador y de Guatemala. That's why from Ongagua, we facilitate this process for the women of Nicaragua, Guatemala, and Ecuador. Para conocer y reflexionar sobre estos derechos, pero sobre todo para que nuestra voz hoy se escuche y para traer propuestas en favor de nuestro derecho humano al agua y al saneamiento. So that their voices can be here and they can have this space to reflect on the human right to water and bring their own ideas to spaces like this one on the fight for human right to water and sanitation. Pues como mujeres no solo queremos ser escuchadas, queremos ser vistas, pero queremos ser tomadas en cuenta. Because as women, we do not only want to be listened, we also want to be seen and take it into account. Por ello, queremos ser parte de la solución y hoy las podrán ver en ese trabajo que realizamos. That's why we want to be part of the solution, and that's why you are going to see part of the work that we are proposing and realizing. Escuchemos sus voces a través de este video. These are the voices in this video.
Okay, we have another video coming up. All things very positive.
Bueno, en lo que se soluciona, trabajamos propuestas.
Meanwhile, the video comes, we're going to present today.
La primera propuesta.
The first one.
Queremos proponer
Water.
que exista mayor inversión económica en las zonas rurales.
First, we want to propose the need to bring more financial support to rural areas.
Pues no podemos hablar de inclusión si solo nos ven como beneficiarias pasivas y no como lo que deberíamos de ser.
Because we cannot talk about inclusion if people only see us as passive beneficiaries and not as the engaged people we can be.
Queremos ser parte de la solución y tomar decisiones en conjunto con los hombres.
We want to be part of the solution and be able to take decisions with the men.
Nuestra segunda propuesta es que queremos participar para desarrollar nuestras capacidades y poder empoderarnos como mujeres.
Our second proposal is that we want to participate so we can explore our capacities and be able to participate in the empowerment.
Y nuestra tercera propuesta es que se desarrollen legislaciones en favor de estos derechos, que busquen la participación de las mujeres y que demos seguimiento a esas políticas.
And the third proposal is that we need a new legislation that can bring us to participate in different politics and decision-making processes.
Pues el agua es un bien que se nos ha encomendado y es un bien común.
Because the water is a right that has been encommended, is a good that has been encommended to us, and is also a common good. Good.
Y por nuestras generaciones pasadas debemos de buscar esa paz.
And because our past generation, our ancestors, we have to look for that peace.
Para que las generaciones futuras tengan libertad.
So that the future generations can have the freedom to enjoy this.
Y como decía mi amigo el relator, cuando unamos la razón con la intención, lograremos grandes cosas y podremos ser vistas, ser escuchadas y ser tomadoras de decisiones como hermanas mujeres, porque también somos importantes.
And she said, because of my friend, the relator said, we have to unify the reason with the intention so that we can all put all together and be listened as people with the right to be listened.
Y con esto termino y espero puedan ver el video.
With this, I finish and here you have the video.
De comunidades rurales indígenas de Ecuador, Guatemala y Nicaragua comparten las limitantes que están derechos humanos al agua y el saneamiento.
Las principales carencias que tenemos es no disfrutar, de hecho, del agua potable. Obtener agua acá es bastante el valor. Por decir, si se compra un tanquero, duraría mínimo 15 días. Un tanquero, el valor entre $30. Ya no consigue agua, ya no llega el agua cada 3 días o a cada 4 días. Por eso nosotros estamos sufriendo. Y nos ha tocado que acarrear el agua a largas distancias, tal vez en nuestras manos.
Embarazada me caí varias veces, ¿verdad? Ahí con mi tina de ropa, con mi balde de agua.
Y ahora que ya vamos adultas, ya nos duele lo que es la espalda, los huesos.
No tenemos una calidad de agua. Por eso vienen las enfermedades.
Nosotros encerramos el estómago, diarrea, o
Tanta enfermedad que hay sobre el agua, pues. Si hablamos del ciclo menstrual, cada vez que vamos al baño necesitamos asearnos. Entonces, si carecemos de líquido en suficientes cantidades en nuestro hogar, no va a haber para hacer una higiene adecuada.
Las mujeres han reflexionado sobre el avance de su participación en la gestión comunitaria del agua.
Hemos tratado de dar, como te dice, un granito de arena, pero aún nos falta más.
Si vamos adelante, todo lo que estamos haciendo ahora lo vamos a aprovechar.
Nosotros somos grandes y que tenemos que hablar con la verdad.
Ante el difícil escenario presentado, estas mujeres han realizado propuestas concretas a diferentes niveles: comunitario, municipal, nacional e internacional.
Necesitamos más espacio, donde seamos escuchadas políticamente en nuestra sociedad, en nuestro barrio, en nuestra familia.
Que se promuevan nuestros derechos como mujeres y que se llegue a cumplir la ODS, la igualdad de género y el derecho al agua y saneamiento. Necesitamos también una ley del agua, porque aquí en Guatemala no hay leyes del agua. Me gustaría que se hagan alianzas con otros organismos donde estos puedan proveer algunos proyectos.
El gobierno, pues, para las comunidades.
Priorizar las vulnerabilidades del agua, higiene y saneamiento de la niñez en las escuelas rurales de Nicaragua.
Que haya agua en mi hogar, pues, y solo abrir la llavecita. Ese es mi sueño, pues.
Muchas gracias. Esta es nuestra intervención y ya para finalizar en 10 segundos, decirles que mañana van a ser presentadas las conclusiones de esta conferencia y no nos han tomado en cuenta para realizarlas. Y yo espero que sean conclusiones objetivas y que permitan y promuevan nuestra participación con voz y voto.
I want to close by saying that tomorrow is they're going to be the closing remarks for the conference, and no one has yet invited us as civil society, and they would like just to hope that they are going to be objective conclusions and they can somehow bring actions that they can entitle that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. For foundation women and in decision making around things that affect them, but also in the video a nice reminder that the human right to water is both a quantity and a quality right, and that the quality is something that impacts very seriously on communities as well. At this point, we are now going to move on to hearing from representatives of government. Their response to what they've seen, hopefully even some commitments. And we're going to begin with the Right Honourable Lord Goldsmith, who I believe otherwise goes by the name of Zac, who is the Minister for Overseas Territories, Commonwealth, Energy, Climate, Environment at the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office of the United Kingdom. He has a string of credentials behind him, which include being Minister for Asia, Energy, Climate and Environment, the Minister for Pacific and the Environment, the Minister of State in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State at DEFRA and DFID, and more beyond that as well. He's spoken and written quite a lot about environmental issues, and amongst other things about how his travels as a younger man gave him first-hand experience of the misery brought about by the promise of Western progress and development. And I would like to hand over to Lord Goldsmith at this stage.
I'll give you that one. Thank you so much. I'm going to tell you, I feel slightly like I'm trespassing. And now I've come here with you can see, a yellow folder with a speech, which I'm charged with delivering. But really, this is much more of a listening exercise. And I have enjoyed very much, even the films, the bits of the film that we saw were incredibly powerful. And the speeches we've heard already have been eloquent, articulate, and deeply moving. So I'm going to be brief. I'm not going to go through the whole speech that I was planning. But I do want to start by thanking you. Thanks for having me here. It's an honor to be able to speak here. It's an obvious thing to say, but water is vital for absolutely everything we need and absolutely everything we do. But despite that, despite the fact that we can't exist without water, water is not valued. And by that I mean the safety of water, the integrity of water, the supply of water. There is no value that society fully or properly attaches to this thing that we all so completely depend on. We treat rivers like trash cans, and we fill water with pollution on a scale which defies belief. Now, I think we are beginning to see a wake up. What's extraordinary is that I didn't realize this, but this is the first such event, on a UN event on water for nearly 50 years. And it just, I think, puts into context how undervalued this issue has been. But and we are getting commitments. There have been around, so far at least, there have been 300 commitments that have been made by governments, by philanthropists, by NGOs, and obviously the key is to turn those commitments into reality. But the truth is our focus when it comes to water, and this is true in so many of the events that are happening here, is still far, far too narrow. We can dig as many wells as we want. We can build up defenses to try and prevent floods. We can do all those things using clever technology. But if we fail to protect and restore the natural systems that provide water in the first place, then all of that is for nothing. I'll just give you one example, though there are hundreds. It's the Congo Basin. The Congo Basin is estimated to provide anything up to 2/3 of all the rainfall for the entire continent of Africa. Congo Basin being destroyed 500,000 hectares every year. So you have people perhaps who see campaigns against deforestation or campaigns on climate change as somehow over there or slightly academic. The reality is that if we lose these extraordinary biomes, and I could have given you the example of the Amazon, many others as well, we're looking at the prospect of a humanitarian crisis on a scale that we've never had to even consider in the past. So this stuff really does matter. And while, as we've just seen on the films, and we just heard in those two most recent speeches, we know that women and girls are feeling the effects in a disproportionate manner, whether that's having to fetch ever-dwindling supplies of water over ever-growing distances, whether it's being kept from school, whether it's dealing with contaminated water and the subsequent disease. But at the same time, we do know that women and girls, local communities, and actually even more so, indigenous people in local communities are a gigantic part of the solution, not just to water, but to all the issues that we address when we turn up at COP26 or COP27 or in a few months' time, COP28 or Montreal just a few weeks ago. And when the UK hosted COP26 in Glasgow a couple of years ago, we consciously brought nature from the margins of the debate and put it right at the heart of the agenda. And I don't think that had ever happened before. And we secured huge commitments from countries around deforestation, for example, countries representing 90% of the world's forests committing to end deforestation this decade, with a whole bunch of other things agreed to enable them to meet those targets. But at its heart was a recognition of the fact that we have no chance of protecting nature. We have no chance of restoring on the scale that we know we need to restore unless we empower and trust and support indigenous people and local communities. It just cannot be done without them. And I'm determined that for as long as the UK has a role in the next COP and the COP after that, this thread must be woven all the way through the decisions that we are taking. Now we have the macro already. We've got the Paris Agreement. We've got the Glasgow Leaders Declaration on Forests. We've got the Montreal Kunming biodiversity framework. We have all the sort of big decisions at the global level. What we don't have yet is the pathway to achieving and meeting all those targets. And those targets could easily languish on paper, and our job is to make them real. And that requires a fundamental shift so that every decision taken by government, every decision taken by business is taken on the assumption and in the recognition of the fact that we are nothing without nature. That is the key. And I think if we can get our collective heads around that challenge, then perhaps we won't need COP29, COP30, COP31. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. I would love to think that we don't need COP29 and 30. Yes, let's imagine a world in which we don't need any further COPs. I mean, I like the idea that we need a fundamental shift. And I think part of that fundamental shift is what we're talking about this afternoon, which is how do those people that one is talking about who are so important in protecting natural resources actually get to lead the discussion and not be excluded from the discussion. And that's a fundamental part of the shift that really does need to happen. I'm now going to hand over to our second speaker in this session, who's Isabella de Roldáo, and again, excuse my pronunciation, who is the president of the Democratic Labour Party in Recife. I'm trying. A city of over 4 million people in northeastern Brazil. She is the first elected woman to occupy the position of deputy mayor of Recife. She has a graduate and postgraduate in law and nutrition, and she has already been elected the councillor and secretary of housing in Recife, in addition to chairing the Workers' Action Group. She currently coordinates international relations for the Recife City Hall and was appointed ambassador for South America for the Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance, a global coalition of entities dedicated to sustainability and tackling the climate crisis. Another powerful woman to speak. Please.
So I have to read my speech. Sorry. I'm thrilled. So good afternoon, everyone. Once again, it's a great pleasure to talk to you about topics that are so important to the development of our cities and consequently for the preservation and well-being of our planet. Yesterday I was on a panel and I spoke a little about the relationship between Recife, the city of water, where I am a first woman vice mayor, and its rivers. It's important to say the first woman vice mayor in my city. It's our space. It's about us. It's about the empowerment, the equality of gender. It's very important. Yes. Today I'm going to focus on actions that we are developing in Recife City Hall with regard to basic sanitation, more specifically about water supply and sanitary sewage. It is important to start this speech by saying that the whole issue involving basic sanitation is a major challenge throughout Brazil, especially in less developed regions and with a more delicate social context, as is the case of Northeast region where Recife is located. Historically, investments made in urban infrastructure and sanitation has always been neglected. It's very hard to say this word, sorry, neglected. This fact, in addition to reducing the quality of life, also reduces the resilience to climate effects of the population residing in peripheral areas, which suffer more from the lack of sanitation, water supply, and decent housing condition. In other words, we are saying that basic sanitation is also a matter of climate justice. According to the National Basic Sanitation System, about 84% of the population residing in Brazil, there is more than 155 million people are covered by a water supply system. When we look at the data by region, we notice that the North and Northeast have respectively 60% and 75% coverage, while the other regions reach an average of over 90%. When we talk about indicators of access to sanitary sewage, the data also draw attention. Our country has around 362,000 kilometers of sewage collection network that serves 39 million homes, which means 63% of Brazilian urban population. I think it's important to present this national overview to you in order to explain a little about the reality of our city. Today, 89% of Recife population has access to water supply, but only 44% have adequate sewage treatment. Aiming at expanding the coverage capacity of sanitary sewage in Recife, the City Hall runs, in partnership with the government of the state of Pernambuco, the Sanitized City Program, one of the largest public-private partnership ever signed in Brazil. In progress for 10 years, the program not only covers the city of Recife, but also the entire metropolitan region, which corresponded to 14 municipalities. In its first year, the program was dedicated to the recovery of existing sanitation structures. Now, the focus is on expanding and implementing new treatment systems. We are currently investing more than $9.5 million in expanding the sanitary sewage system in the Beberibe Basin, in the North Zone, one of the most important rivers that cross our city. There will be more than 70 kilometers of collection network that will benefit several neighborhoods in our city, bringing more health and quality of life to the population and more preservation of our environment. The works in the region also include the requalification of the banks of the Beberibe River with the construction of new roads and urban equipment. We are also making improvements to the drainage system since we are aware of the importance of a good management of rainwater. Such investment is added to approximately $10 million already contributed to expand and improve the sanitary sewage system in 9 more neighborhoods, benefiting more than 37,000 inhabitants of Recife. It is with the intention of sharing this immense challenge with you that as a Vice Mayor of Recife, I open our city to dialogue, to exchange of experience and new partnerships in the search for solutions that aim to improve the lives of our population. Basic sanitation is a cross-cutting issue that encompasses several spheres, including being contemplated in several sustainable development goals, and which is also the scope of action of several UN agencies, like water, housing, health, human rights, childhood, among others. Being in the discussion space promoted by ICLEI in a parallel session of the UN Water Conference 2023 represents an important showcase to draw the attention of the international community to the challenges that, not only for city, but so many others around the world face in the everyday life. The most vulnerable groups that suffer most from the lack of urban infrastructure are also the most impacted by the effects of climate change, especially those related to water issues, such as floods and landslides. These groups need to be at the center of the debate, as the effects of the climate crisis are not uniformly perceived by society, even more so when it comes to invisible populations. Proposing solutions to combat climate injustice requires us to consider, it's okay? Thank you. Proposing solutions to combat climate injustice requires us to consider issues of gender, race, social class, ethnicity, and nationality that are essential to debate. This discussion cannot and should not be neglected. Thank you. We can never lose sight of it. Together, we need to exchange knowledge, strengthen our partnership and relationships, and make new investment in favor of a more egalitarian, economically strong, preserved, and focused on a urban sustainable development society. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, indeed. And for the reminder that exclusion comes from a number of different lenses: gender, ethnicity, religion, race, class, and women often bear the worst mix of all of those together. We are way behind schedule, but it's a very interesting session. I hope you're all still interested and alive. And I'm now going to take a decision to get us even a little bit further behind schedule, because we have with us another mayor this afternoon, and I'm going to give him 1 minute. It's Jefferson Koji. He's the mayor of the city of Monrovia from Liberia.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's very, very interesting to have a mayor speaking for a minute. Well, we want to say thank you so kindly. It is a very interesting conversation. I want to say thank you for each and every one of you here. I'm from Monrovia. My name is Jefferson Koji, and I'm happy to be the youngest mayor ever in our city, it's possible in Africa. But I want to say to you, water is life. Paradoxically, what have been said here and what is lacking. A lot of people came here and said, there's no water. But I'm from a city where there is water. But yet and still, my people lack water. I'm from a city that is one of the wealthiest cities in the world, Monrovia. We have approximately 182 inches of rainfall yearly. And yet and still, our people are in the midst of that opportunity, but cannot have water. What is staggering about that? While others come here and say to you they are in search of water, I'm saying to you, my people in my city, water is not an issue. But what can we do to allow the God-given opportunity that where people are yearning for water? Basically, we have from May to October, 6 months. And in that 6 months, the wettest month is June to July. We have approximately 32 inches of rainfall up to 958 millimeter of rainfall in a place. I would like to seize this opportunity to say, now that we have been escorted by our Minister of Water, we have come to tell our story, how we can develop an opportunity of nearly, we just conducted our census that have nearly to 2 million people within a very little city, historical city. In fact, matter of fact, it's the first independent city on the continent of Africa, and also a founding member of the United Nations. I want to say thank you so kindly. We are developing strategy to see how the water that falls so much in Monrovia, so it can be turned into an opportunity and become a life Liberia, particularly Monrovia. Thank you so kindly.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And thank you very much for keeping that to the unusual time imposed on a politician. Thank you very much. I mean, the challenges are not always about physical water scarcity. It's about actually getting the water to the people of the right quality. And we all know that sometimes there's not enough water, sometimes there's too much water, and it's a challenge to manage that. But thank you very much for that intervention. We're now going to move from the political level to the official level. And it gives me great pleasure to invite Mr. Risimati Mathye, who is the Deputy Director General for Water and Sanitation Services Management in the Department of Water and Sanitation in my home country of South Africa. He's a civil engineer by training. We were joking earlier that there are not nearly enough civil engineers in government, particularly thinking and progressive engineers. He has many years of experience in design, construction, operation, and maintenance, and he was also in the senior management of the city of Johannesburg, so he has a lot of experience at the municipal level as well. His role currently in the department includes providing leadership for the long-term sustainable provisioning of water supply and sanitation services in South Africa. No small task.
I hope I don't have a minute. Thank you so much. First of all, let me just say I will just stand on the same protocol established so that I don't waste time. I think I was actually touched, for some time I felt I could hear everything you were saying, even without the translator and what she said. But I think the message you basically brought here is very touching. I've had a chance to look at the videos, and at least they were not cutting when I was watching them. I managed to see the whole of them. But I think my departure point is basically based on what the first speaker mentioned. I had my own speech as well, but I realized it might end up being irrelevant to go to that speech. The first speaker, I think the emphasis was basically on water as an absolute right, which I think all of us here will attest to the very same issue. But contrary to what the mayor has mentioned, in South Africa, we are the driest. We're one of the top 30 driest countries in the world. We receive on average less than 500 millimeters of water per year. Population 63.1 million people. Our consumption is averaging around 233 liters per capita per day. And we're losing 45% of that. Now, you can see that we have a very complex environment. But at the dawn of democracy in 1994, which I think most of you associate with Madiba, and which we have the highest pride of may his soul rest. Now, at the dawn of democracy, what South Africa has done was that there had to be a mass production in terms of service delivery, part of which meant that our legislations for to put the right. It's there to what is the need to norms then you must layer. Well, that first, what I'm lessons. The country are mission. Now, South Africa mission constitution operate it of government whole account. That's in the action. Now, ability and youth. of the office. It is try but to say it will not in the for also in the some the is a but our just said so that bit of what natural water resource to enter into so if interest to undertake it has the right is given business the but that's been the word abstract stream and streams to water. So what this service from so that they live the water also and of that area. Some of the this country usually what of that just so and get contact with a few things that is that there is one month by selling it because of the other chemical
Thank you very much indeed. I do pretty invitation. With whole so we're going to is going to that before we start could like people and the discussion, the challenge, everything that we
Y pues el problema que voy a plantear es el de la cervecera, que es muy grave porque esta industria está enorme. Y, y, pues pueden ser muchos escasea el agua. El agua, la opción de esta empresa. Primero que hice pensar, muy caluroso, pero sí con gente muy comprometida. Guardianes del agua, que tenemos de esa mesa, cuidar de ellas. Que se comprometan a enfrentar no ocurrir. Están viendo, acá.
और हमारे जो लेकर जाते हैं तो 50-20 की बोतलों में मिलती है और बर्तनों के लिए और खाने के लिए पानी हम यहाँ से इस्तेमाल करते हैं और पानी हमें महंगा नहीं होता और साफ पानी नहीं हमें मिलता, नलकों में से पानी साफ नहीं आता हूँ। हुकूमत हमारी पानी कम देते हैं तो खुद हमें पानी नहीं मिलता। और क्या करें जीवन जो है क्या आप मुहैया करें नदी में साफ पानी आना चाहिए। अगर हम घर पे ना हो तो डेढ़ से पानी खवातीन लेकर जाती हैं।
hiện tại rồi nhà một xã tập lịch là ở cái chỗ phát đi rồi rồi và là tập nói phải qua cái đó là năm độ mình sạc về hàng này ada perang bagi ring đặt kita đặt bằng bàn vừa thì lấy lại cá luôn nó còn senang jauh biar berjum kanak-kanak dia kita alo adalahการผลิตสำหรับผลิตทำของการต้องหกตึกเป็นเที่ยงในความการให้ชมเปียเนียสถาสหกรณ์ก็ได้แต่สดับในปีนี้ชมออยกลาหานได้สมได้หมดเลยขอบอกกันไว้เอาปฏิบัติแต่เกี่ยวกับหลังตู้
Thanks very much. So enormous on the water sanitation. At this point, I'm going to call to the victim, Mr. Pedro Arrojo-Agudo, who is the Special Rapporteur on the human rights to safe drinking water and sanitation. Previously, he was a member of the Spanish Parliament. He served on the Commission on International Cooperation on Human Rights. He was also a professor on the area of fundamentals of economic analysis at the University of Zaragoza for many years, and he's been a professor emeritus there since 2011. In 2002, he co-founded the New Water Culture Foundation, a non-profit organization focused on human rights, transparency, and public participation in the management, planning of water and aquatic ecosystems. He's also the co-founder of the Public Water Network, and he comes with a great track record behind him, and he's going to talk to us about the human right of water and sanitation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you. Thank you, first of all. I remember last October, I came here to New York for presenting my annual thematic report, the General Assembly, and I had a meeting, short meeting with Mr. Antonio Guterres, a great honor. And I told him, well, Excellency, we will have the conference on water next March. And he didn't know at that moment. Oh, tell me, which date? And you can note, no? And they said, well, in order you can imagine the importance of this event that you are organizing, imagine that it doesn't exist, the WHO, okay? And that every 2-3 years is the pharmaceutical lobby who convene a forum on health, global forum on health. Well, there is no anything else, we will go. But after the pandemic is the UN who convene a conference, World Conference on Health. Could you imagine the expectation on this conference? I said, well, this is that we have in water next year, okay? Well, as you know, it is the institutional weakness of the UN in water matters that has been the fact that the private initiative has occupied the space of the United Nations. It's the ones who organize every 3 years, I think, the World Water Forum, and so the grassroots movements organized the Alternative World Water Forum. And so I think this is the great importance of this conference. We are starting, it is at present, this is our start point for us, for beginning something else. Friends, I would like to say, we don't get what we don't fight for first. And we don't fight for what we don't dream, because we need it, okay? Well, I dream and I wish that one day events like this one, instead of being side events outside the UN building, will be central events at the UN headquarters with the states on the sides and in the background, you know, the social movements, the water defenders occupying the center of the room, getting priority, the access to the microphone, and with the states listening attentively in order to, in any case, at the end, speak and give an account of what they receive and understand. Okay, we can think that, and we certainly think that this is impossible. But I always agreed with that motto of the World Social Forums in its day, you know, that another world is possible. And I always completed that motto by saying that another world is possible because it is necessary. This UN is possible because we need it. We need it. We are just at the beginning to build the United Nations that we need. Rumar from Ongawa, I know the efforts you have made for reach this event. So thank you so much indeed. When I am asked what I expect from this conference, I tell you briefly, I'm optimistic. Not so much because of the concrete results that will come out of the conference itself, but because of the spirit that I feel is born around this conference. Thanks to you. As Alana said, you're right. I was there. The presentation of the manifesto for water justice, I think it was the day before yesterday, I don't know, it's so confusing, was absolutely exciting. I nearly cried, really. It was the multitude of movements that under the challenge of this conference have come together in People's Water Forum first, but united in the manifesto with the main large NGOs that work and fight from strategies different, without any doubt, of those of social movements, but also finally with indigenous leaders there, who rarely explicitly ally with non-indigenous organizations or movements. Everyone was there. Impressive. Never happened before. Well, they're united by this manifesto with the substantial contents that express the clamor of the silenced, often criminalized, persecuted, and even assassinated. All united under the collective identity of water defenders claiming their character of right holders. I'm not against stakeholders. But what means stakeholders really here? Stakeholders in Spanish, we say interesados en el agua. And finally, there is another expression in Spanish that is nuanced, is que tienen intereses en el agua. You know, economic interest in water. They have this kind of interest, and they have the means for lobbying every day. They have the office close to here. Okay, legitimate, no problem with it. But there is a gap with the water defenders, the right holders. So this idea is burning, is born in this moment. We are the protagonists. This new movement that is raising. The clamor of the rights holders demanding dialogue and joint work with the UN. We are offering to the UN. You are offering your best. I think the UN will have to reflect and understand the importance of the supply and demand that the water defenders are making of it. It is not just that the water defenders need a UN that will take up their role on this front, but that the UN needs the energy and legitimacy that the water defenders, the water defenders movements are offering to the UN. I'm sure it will come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that very powerful input. Wow. Yes. Thank you very much. We have to be out of here by 5. So I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to ask Alana to come and quickly set the scene, and we're going to see if we can get a couple of minutes of discussion for people.
Okay. What have we heard? Well, one of the things we've heard is that rights by themselves don't magically lead to change, that people claim rights, that communities claim rights, that it is the action of frontline defenders that realize rights. And so it is critical that we act in support of those defenders, not only to protect them from repression, assassination, but that we stop the silence. Because this is, I mean, you can hear the unheard, but we need to understand that many, many rights defenders and frontline defenders are silenced. They're silenced by strategic slap suits. They're silenced by fear, by victimization, and they're silenced by criminalization. We do not, the people that are claiming rights are occupying land. Those are actually, in many legal frameworks, considered criminals. Right? And so a massive paradigm shift is needed in order to back the rights claimers. They're not a neat and tidy group of people. They're not nice, neat NGOs doing social accountability. They're people on the ground defending rivers and lakes, and land and housing and claiming their rights. And those are the people that need the backing. This is not a pretty struggle. And so I think it's important that we take that into account. So I wanted to, and so much agency, so much action, so much power coming from people. And just a quick point, all the videos are in the Zoom chat. So please feel free to pick them up. They're also all over Twitter. So although this has not been the most useful screening, it's all available, and that's why we have a digital campaign and not just an event. So legalizing, legitimizing, decriminalizing, and supporting rights claiming. Any comments, thoughts, questions?
All right, so I'm Timothy from Liberia, and I think this is the most successful session ever in the history of the UN. Yeah. For us in Liberia, this has provided the opportunity for our leaders to listen to us. Why am I saying that? Our honorable, he represents the EPA, and we're talking about climate change and WASH. We have the most closer government official to the president in our country is a Lord Mayor. And making remark in this kind of forum, we are very sure that the message of the masses and reach the office of the president. Then we have the overall work for the state, who is a chair for the White Commission. So this opportunity for us in Liberia is very key to end the struggle for the rights of a marginalized group. It will require empowering the very marginalized communities. And I must say in this forum, to see somebody from the communities coming to this forum, it was because of institutions that water aid, institutions that water and sanitation for all. So we want to ask our grown-up that please provide opportunity for empowerment of the communities to be able to empower and demand their rights. To end on this note, we need to be aware of our rights and responsibilities. And I think the issue of research and innovations are very key. Thanks to the water business, of being the first institution to invest in the research in water in Liberia. Today, there's a very strong report that we have, and we're using that to transform a lot of things, both in policies and practice, as we respect to water and sanitation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tim. Anybody else?
Hello, my name's Jamie Matthews from the Water Sanitation Centre at the University of London. There's been talk at the end about how the video element didn't work, but I want to say that I think it did work. It was like being inside an installation about. Yeah, sure. It was like being inside a kind of art installation about the difficulty of translating the voices to a place like this. When they arrive, they come scrambled, broken up, laid over each other, fighting for space, mediated by a whole set of technologies and institutions that can't quite stand up to the task. They're not very appropriate in that sense. And then also, when we did get those direct voices, and the speakers right at the start, it had, my eyes, a really interesting effect. It made the people who came after, those more institutional voices that, those more institutional voices that did end up taking more of the floor because of this difficulty of getting those voices across. At least two of those speakers said they were unable to deliver their speeches because of the testimony they'd heard. It was like the prepared, scripted type of language just couldn't quite stand up. And I think that's a reminder of the words of Mr. Arrojo at the end, that when these kind of voices do get in front of institutional actors, they shame, expose, and show a whole set of things that have a genuine, like, emancipatory potential against the more conservative elements of some of these institutions. So that felt like it felt like we were living that in some kind of strange aesthetic way together. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Incredibly powerful. Thank you so much. Bubala, and then the person in front of Bubala.
Good afternoon. My name is Migdalia. I'm from Zambia. Listening to the story, this is very thought-provoking. Listening to the special rapporteur, it kind of gave me an idea about how the UN sets the culture in the world. And when you look at how unserious we have been about water, look at the genesis of it. In my country, water is not a human right. And it's partly because it was not taken seriously at the global agenda. And by the time we've woken up to the fact that it must be a right, it's almost like it's too expensive. You know, it's too expensive. And in Zambia, they would say it's utopic, you know, that everybody must have water. Where would this world? And because of that, our people are very comfortable with suffering. They will stand on a nail and just sit there and take it. And for me, hearing people like a lady from Mexico tell the story is very empowering. And I think that's where we should be going, that more of they need to be telling their stories more, because maybe the politicians are tired of hearing people like me say that, you know, I'm working in Katete where boreholes are drying. The Katete people need to tell the stories themselves, you know, and the women there need to tell the stories themselves about the safety issues of having to wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning, because maybe I've hit a brick wall. So thank you very much. This is really, really inspiring for advocacy. Thank you very much. My name is Mercy Amukwando from Ghana. I like this session very much. It's kind of resonates with the issues on the ground in my country and where I'm coming from. We had videos from normal communities, but can you imagine videos from a mining community? Videos from areas where industrial pollutions are getting into the water of the indigenous people, and they do not have the voice to speak. They have no option than to consume that water. And so this is a very special event. And I thank the speakers. Most often, women are neglected. So many people are excluded. The mayor mentioned by culture. Who are we excluding by virtue of culture? Who are we excluding? What is the marginalization frame? I think this is an opportunity for all of us in this room to do a thorough analysis of marginalization in the areas where we are coming from. Who is marginalized? On what basis? And how is it affecting the people? Sometimes we feel the indigenous people are affected, but it comes back to the very people who refuse to provide services. And so it is a call for all of us. And I believe strongly that we need to institute accountability mechanism at the grassroots. If we value water, like the minister said, what are the sources of the water we depend on? And how do we collectively protect the water we have? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very powerful. Bill, over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to say something. I want to ask a favor to the national community, to the national defenders of the water, to pay attention in Colombia, please, because in Colombia we have a really, really bad situation with human rights. The people who are fighting for rivers, for environmental, for forests, the bad people are killing us. I have many friends working with me. They are going away because if they are still in their territories, they're gonna die. Because in Colombia, if you work for water, you are almost dying. It's a very dangerous situation. So I just want to ask to the national people who is working with us in different countries. We have different difficult situation with the armed people in the forest. So the farmers, the indigenous, and the local people, we are in dangers, you know. So just pay attention in Colombia, please. Put your eyes in Colombia because it's difficult. Thank you.
Okay. I'm afraid we're out of time. Nick, we're gonna let you have a word, and then I'm gonna have a word, then I'm gonna hand to Barbara.
Thanks, Alana. Oh, and I agree. It's the best session that the UN's had. This was certainly this week, so it's been great to be. And I think you're right. It's the messy reality of the water crisis, right? People claiming rights, and it's not the corporate glitz over there. It's in here. Just quickly, with many of you in the room, we've been running a research program for the past 4 years that tries to understand how accountability processes work and why they work. And what that shows is they do work. 8 out of 10 cases we've looked at globally, if you've got strong accountability, claiming of rights by communities, it does lead to better outcomes for SDG 6. So it's cost effective, and it can work in many different contexts. So the people over there looking for ways to get progress on SDG 6, it's in this room, right? It's people power that does it, and we've got to shout for that, make sure that it's supported. One thing we're trying to do is to set up a global support facility to provide legal, financial, and technical advice to water defenders, and it'd be great to have your support in the design of that, so it meets the needs of the people you work with, and that's coming in the next few months. Just finally, we're actually with Barbara and many others, we've put a letter of concern together to the UN Secretary General about the the lack of inclusion and the lack of accountability in this week's proceedings. If I can somehow share that, there's still time to sign it. We need 3 more signatures to get over 100. And then if you want to come with me to try and find the UN Secretary General and Henk Ovink, you'd be very welcome to join me, because we're going to go straight from here to land it on their table.
Okay, I think that sounds like a good place to stop. Thank you, Columbia, for sharing that. Thank you, Nick.
And on that note, I think we need to finish off. But just quickly before we finish, I'm not going to try and summarize what has been an extraordinary journey this afternoon. But I do need to say thank you to a number of people before we end, and partly that's thank you to the 22 co-conveners of this session who've all put effort into making this the wonderful session that it was. But we should also thank the team behind the scenes who have been working at making this. And in particular, I want to thank Michael, Tim, Don, and Ivan, who have put an immense amount of work into trying to make this happen. But there was also a comms team and all sorts of other people. So thank you to everybody who put effort into making this work. And then thank you very much to the speakers who've been powerful and moving and incredibly invigorating. And thank you very much to the participants who've sat here much longer than the session was meant to be. And thank you to everybody online. I hope that the sound got sorted out and you managed to get as much of it as possible. Thank you very much to everybody. I'm not going to summarize it, as I said, but I just want to highlight, I want to reiterate what the Special Rapporteur said. What he said was, we don't get what we don't fight for. Nobody gives up power easily. You take it. We don't get what we fight for, what we don't fight for. And we don't fight for what we can't dream. And as Lana said, it's not a pretty fight, but it is a fight that is absolutely essential. So we, all of us, at whatever we have, whatever resources we have, need to take forward the fight outside this room. This was an event, but this is a process, and we need to take it forward. Things really, really do need to change, and they're not going to change unless we all actually step forward and take the fight forward. And on that note, I would like to thank everybody, and I would like to thank End Water Poverty for actually being the driver behind this and the enormous energy that End Water Poverty have put into making this happen. Thank you very much to everybody.